Welcome to the Craftsman Founder Podcast, hosted by Lucas Carlson. Every week, we talk to founders, entrepreneurs, and those who've made a craft out of creating companies and enterprises. Listen every week to get ideas for starting, promoting, and growing your business. There are no shortcuts, just good old-fashioned hard work and craft. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's interview.
Hello, this is Lucas Carlson from the Craftsman Founder Podcast. This week is really interesting. We've got some really awesome authors, Brant Cooper and Jeremiah Gardner, who have written an awesome book. This is a book that I feel has needed to be written for a long time. I haven't seen a lot of books written in this kind of genre. It's called The Lean Brand. And what they talk about is brand. And to me, brand is one of those things that's really important. It's like the thing that separates some of the best companies in the world from everyone else is this brand, is this feeling, what is brand? And we'll get into that because it's kind of, on the surface, what is it? It's kind of not so easy to get a quick definition, but that's why I've got these great thinkers on this podcast to help us understand what is brand, what does it mean, how can we use it. And so I hope you guys enjoy this. Brant and Jeremiah, can you guys give me a brief introduction and our audience to understand who you are and where you've come from?
Sure. You want to go first, Jeremiah?
Sure. My name is Jeremiah Gardner. Thanks, first of all, Lucas, for having us. Really excited about the chat. My background is as a professional musician for a while. Worked in politics. Have worked in all kinds of different areas. Opened a creative agency. And kind of the goal in creative agencies is to move up and up and up to bigger and bigger clients, and we were successful in doing that. And when we got to the top, we kind of realized that I was just a window dresser, and there's something really wrong with this idea of brand and the way that we talk about it. And so I kind of put things on hold and asked the question, really, is what is brand, and is it really important? And when I answered that, yeah, it probably is, and this is what I mean when I say it, then the next question is, where is it most important? The answer to that was really in the startup world. And so that's the genesis of this book. That's how kind of Brant and I bumped up against one another, and that's kind of a short, brief way to introduce myself.
Great.
So hi, I'm Brant Cooper. So I really got started doing startups back in the 90s and the early 2000s, and had a little bit of success and a little bit of failure and a little bit of in between. And really back in those days, the way we built startups was pretty crazy if you think about it today. And it was really about having conviction about your ideas. I call them we built faith-based startups, which is why so few of them succeeded. And so after I left my last startup, I started getting involved with how do we bring some scientific rigor really to the sales and marketing side of the house, and really are we even building something that anybody wants? So I got turned on to Steve Blank's 4 Steps of the Epiphany, ended up writing what's called the cheat sheet to that book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development. A couple of years later, Eric Ries wrote his phenomenal Lean Startup book that really took some of these learning processes mainstream, and I followed up with the Lean Entrepreneur. I like to say that Eric's book is the why, and mine was the how-to. Really gets deep into the processes around lean innovation. And one of the things that has always sort of been out there is this marketing side of the house. And when I was at the last startup that I worked at, I was running marketing, and it was really when marketing analytics was just starting, and so it was a way for us to bring ROI to advertising and to our other marketing activities. Boy, that was almost 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago, and so still to me there's this one part of marketing that's hanging out there that's not subject to the same sort of rigor as now most marketing is, and that's brand. And so I think both large enterprise innovators as well as startup entrepreneurs still view brand as this black box, and we have to go and hire these brand experts and turn over all of this hard-earned cash or hard-earned investment dollars to these marketing geniuses, and then I don't get to measure, what the heck I get out of that. And so when I ran into Jeremiah and he was thinking the same thing, I was all like, okay, this is the next book, and I'm really excited about what we've produced.
So let's get into it. What is brand? What does brand mean?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question, and I don't know if there's a right answer to it. I mean, one of the things that you kind of have to start with is the definition, and brand is really a suitcase word. We pack a lot of different things into that word. We talk about it's a feeling. We talk about it's our logos. We talk about it's our promise. I mean, there's in the book we actually lay out, I don't know, probably 20 different definitions that are all standardized definitions that people have come up with. But I think when you get beyond the idea of my definition is right and mine's wrong, what everyone's really trying to get at, I think the underpinning of it all is the relationship that develops between an organization and an audience. And so we don't have relationships with the brand is the relationship. And so I think that that's truly the way that that helps kind of frame how you approach these things. And so brand development is really about relationship development. How do I build relationship? And it's not fluffy, junior high school relationships. It's real and powerful relationships that exist between organizations and audiences. And to kind of take it down to another level, it's the same thing that we feel every day about the purchases that we make. We choose to buy from some companies based on how we feel about them, the type of relationship we have with them, whether we're aware of them in the first place. And we choose to ignore some or have angst towards some based on the way they've behaved or the interactions we've had. And so it really is, the underpinning of a relationship is what's important. And whether you define that as a gut feeling or you define that as a bunch of different things, to me, brand is the relationship, and that's the best way to approach it in the most helpful way.
So
I think I also think it's important to understand that the definitions, some of the older definitions that Jeremiah was talking about served companies and brands well for most of the 20th century. And so I think what people need to understand is that the economic and technological transformations that we've gone through the last 10 years and 20 years and looking forward, even it's ongoing. I mean, we're just the world is being disrupted, and so it would really be silly of us to think that during all of this turmoil, all this disruption, that our relationship with our products and businesses hasn't changed as well. And there's a number of things that make it quite obvious that it's changed. It used to be that we had communication channels were one way. It was media, it was radio, it was TV, and so an organization really could project their brand one way. But all you have to do nowadays is, you could be a CEO and say that, fat people shouldn't wear my clothes, and then make the argument that brand is only one way, right? It's instant feedback, and it's feedback that maybe destroys the company. It certainly has destroyed stock prices pretty darn quickly, and so I think what we need to understand is that this is a natural occurrence, that the relationship with our brands and our products now defined what the brand is, and it's based upon all the changes we've gone through in this world.
that makes a lot of sense. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs, I talk to them, I give them advice, and a lot of them, when I talk to them, I hear their updates, and they're working on the product. Maybe some of them are spending time with customers and doing sales. Those are the good ones. But they always seem like their time is kind of like all sucked up into things like product and sales. So why should an entrepreneur care about brand? Why should they carve out any time to think about brand? And isn't that for bigger companies? Isn't that for companies that are at a later stage? Or what is it that an entrepreneur...
Well, they're already doing branding. So that's sort of the bottom line, right? So if you take that the brand is the relationship, they're already building that relationship, and so they're already doing branding. And so we feel like you should begin thinking about branding from moment one, because if you choose not to, you're still doing branding. You're not thinking about it. And so I think what we're saying is yeah, those entrepreneurs don't necessarily need to think about a logo, and they don't need to think about some of these other branding artifacts. And it may be that they don't have to change what they're doing. They maybe don't have to change that they're talking about their product and doing some customer development. That might be their early stage brand development. But then we want them to think about it from a branding perspective.
Yeah, and I'd say that's absolutely right. And I would add on to that I think oftentimes there's this kind of perception that I bump up against a lot in working with startups and entrepreneurs and founders that brand is kind of BS. And I don't disagree at all, because I think a lot of the way that we approach it is, if you were a dog, what breed of dog would you be? If you were a flower, what kind of flower would you be, and colors why? These things are fluffy nonsense questions that put you in the weeds that are BS. But I think the greatest business plan, the greatest product with the greatest feature set, the most wonderful business canvas you can ever create, or the best logistical fulfillment center you've ever put together, is meaningless without an audience. And so brand is vital to building that audience. It is the relationship, right? And so there's this great story that a local startup here, a tech startup, that they're a case study in the book, and they were talking about how when they started, all they talked about was the features. And they would just build a bunch of features, and that was the conversation. It was all about features, all about the product, all about that. And what they learned in that is that, yeah, they got initial traction, but it went nowhere, because they said the conversation, all we could talk about then was the features. And all we could do is debate about why or why not we had this feature, or why this one worked this way, or why the product was this. And we missed out on the opportunity of the reason why we built it in the first place, and the reason why people should use it in the first place, was that we were trying to make life better. We're trying to make something valuable for people, and it was the first time, the first iteration of the product. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when we get stuck in the cave, we can kind of call it the feature bubble. We're not thinking about how people are going to relate to it. We're not thinking about the most vital thing is, can we really talk about why we built this and why it matters to somebody. And so brand's integral to those things.
What's in it for the entrepreneur? What do they get if they put time and effort and focus into brand?
They get to be the next Apple. I'm just kidding. No, I think there's no simple answer to that. Every startup is different, and every entrepreneur situation is different. Not every idea, not every product, not every company is a multi-million-dollar company. That's just the reality. But I believe that as you build relationships with your audience, one, I think from a personal standpoint, you get a little bit of that feeling of traction. You get a little bit of that feeling of there's people behind me that care about this. But I think that when you focus on brand, you give yourself a bigger chance of success, to at least realize the market that exists for the product. And I'm not saying it's a multi-million-dollar market or a billion-dollar market. It may be $1 million a year market, and that you build from there. But I think the relationship is key to even discovering those things in the first place. And so that's, I think, one of the things that you get from brand, amongst a million probably other things.
Well, so I think that this is where the Lean Brand book dovetails nicely with the Lean Entrepreneur. So we've leveraged the framework, the value stream discovery framework from the Lean Entrepreneur. And so what we want to help people understand is that the brand, representing all of the interactions between the company and its audience, is how you develop passion in a company. And so your product in itself can create satisfaction, right? Your product has specific functionality that says, hey, we're going to solve this problem for you. And so users and customers expect you to be able to fulfill that with the product. But people are not really passionate typically around the product itself. They're passionate around the story and the impact it has on their life, or a variety of other things. There are certainly instances where the product is so amazing, so clearly above and new and beautiful and elegant, and the user experience maybe is over the top, that I actually feel like people can get passionate about the product without any other sort of things built on top of the product. There's a lot of companies out there that will offer zero customer support, for example, yet they're still passionate around the product. And so but I think those are few and far between, and that I think it takes a real super disruptive product to be able to have that sort of impact. And over time, then you will still have to be able to develop this greater relationship around the story and this, shared journey and all of this other aspects about the business beyond the product. You'll need to build that eventually if you want to become a billion-dollar company. And so that's what we're laying out in the book is how do you attach these other elements of your business model on top of the product that drives passion in the business. And those other aspects plus the product are your brand, because it's the way you're touching your customer at multiple points inside of this organization, in this business model. You're having this ongoing relationship with various touch points. And so you have to start thinking about all of those things eventually. We also look at the innovation spectrum, which again comes out of the lean entrepreneur, and so on one side you've got sort of more sustaining incremental innovation, and on the other side you've got this breakthrough innovation or more disruptive change. And where you lie on that spectrum sort of determines how much brand is going to be able to drive your business early on versus some of these other aspects that are reflected in what we're calling the branding, the purposeful branding. And so early on in startups, the more breakthrough you are, the more your product is going to be the focus for early that relationship with your customer. But if you're over more on the sustaining side, there's competition out there. The market already sort of understands what you're trying to do, and so you better be bringing things other than features. You better be bringing like extraordinary customer support, right? I mean, so Zappos is selling shoes online. I mean, there's people who are not passionate about the fact that they can get shoes online, and so Tony Hsieh's like brilliance is actually bringing all of these other elements to the table that drives the passion around that company. And so again, selling shoes online is not going to be something that's considered breakthrough or revolutionary, and so he better bring some brand elements to it, these other touch points, in order to drive passion to make the company a big successful company.
I see. So to paraphrase from what I'm hearing, it's like, what does an entrepreneur get out of building a great brand? An entrepreneur gets a framework for thinking about how to differentiate their company so that it is valuable and something that it's a way of thinking to create more value for the customer. Is that kind
more
of
more value for the customer that results in passionate customers? Passionate customers are the ones that share or participate on your social media campaigns. Passionate people are the ones that email their friends, or if you've got you're buying a high margin product, you're kind of showing off the brand there because it makes you feel special or whatever. I'm guilty about that. So I mean, I think that it's what drives the passion, and so the passion is what allows you to grow organically because people are spreading the word without you spending a dime on marketing.
I see. So if you want passionate users, you should be thinking about, how do I build a great brand? So then the next question, obviously, how do I build a great brand? Yeah, obviously that's in the book, and I don't want you to give away all your secrets, but can you give us the high-level overview? What do you do?
Yeah,
the million-dollar question.
I mean, you hire an agency, of course. No, I'm kidding. No, I think that when you think about the relationship that develops between an audience and some of the great ones that exist out there, they weren't discovered overnight, and they weren't built overnight, and they certainly weren't built with 10 people sitting around a boardroom in an agency coming up with brilliant ideas. And so I think that the starting place is to say, what type of relationship do we want? What do we think? Who do we think this is for? And why do we believe that? And who are the people that, I mean, when we talk about target market, it just is like nails on a chalkboard for me, because it's people, it's living, breathing people that pull out their wallets and choose to whether or not they're going to support and purchase. And so I think it starts with the questions about who and why do we believe people will be passionate. I think it moves on to if we believe that people will be passionate for this reason, how can we measure that and how will we test it? And so the entire idea of lean brand development is to kind of move things that are very like hypothetical or hypothesis driven that in the conventional model we just execute on. So we say, okay, this product is for this demographic of people, and they like the color blue, and they hang out here, and so therefore, well, here's all the things that we're going to build, and here's your brand deck. And I'm guilty of this as a brand genius, right? I've done it, and I know how the process works, and that's exactly what it is. It's all subjective opinion. And in fact, it's funny because in a popular publication called Adweek, they just launched it yesterday, their newest version of the Brand Genius Awards. They literally call them that. And the idea is that we take this brand genius and they, all of a sudden, based on these different inputs, are able to, over a long weekend or a few boardroom meetings, bang out this amazing relationship, and you just go and broadcast it from Times Square to Tokyo, and you win. And I think that's largely a myth, because the reality is that you can learn and you can develop these things iteratively. So one of the things that, from a very, very early stage, say you have just an idea, man, go to a networking event and see if you can get someone to lean in when you talk about why you built your product or what you're thinking about doing. At a larger scale, say you're past your angel round, there's a lot of things that you can do to A/B split test to see how people are responding. And really, how will you measure passion? How will you measure satisfaction? What's the difference between those things, and what are experiments that we need to run? And so the idea is, what are the most critical assumptions we're making? How can we design experiments to run, to learn, to prove whether or not these assumptions are correct or they're wrong or we need to tweak? And how do we go about the business of building a relationship? And one of the tools that we kind of provide, and one of the driving forces, is really a minimum viable brand.
Jeremiah, give the love box example. I love this example.
Yeah, so there's a startup. If you've watched the American version of The Office, Rainn Wilson plays Dwight Schrute, which is just an amazing character, right? And he has a startup called Soul Pancake. And one of the things that they did is they said, like, look, we want to develop this relationship, and we want to help people ask life's big questions, because we don't talk about them enough. So instead of going out and buying a logo and buying all these things, they decided let's put some actual experiences in. And so they went to Venice Beach, and there's this video that you can find of it. It's amazing. And they set up this big box. I mean, a big, big, big white box. And outside of the box, a few feet from it, was this button that says, "Need love? Press here." And they brought some cameras, and obviously they're videotaping everything. And you see people kind of walk by and kind of give this look and, like, maybe reach out towards the button, and then, like, oh no, I'm not going to touch it. And then the first person works up their courage and hits the button. And the box explodes open, starts to open, and streamers and fireworks start popping everywhere, right? And as the box opens, there's a big fog, and like 10 people in white leotards with big heart, boxes on their heads come running out of the box and surround the person that pressed the button and are dancing around them and giving them Hershey kisses and giving them hugs and all this stuff. And you just see the delight of the person that pushed the button. And then a few minutes later, they run back into the box closes again, and everyone's standing around laughing, and they wait for the next person, down the line to press it. The idea being this, is that if we want to express the idea of love or a big question, we could buy a logo, we could do a big billboard campaign, we could pay a lot of money in design, or we could get on the street and make a dynamic artifact, something that's truly meaningful to someone, that stands out, and engage in that way. And so when you ask the question, how do you build a great brand, there's no right answer to that, because every audience is different, every startup is different. But the idea is that you have to experiment in order to discover the best way to communicate and the best relationship that you can possibly have.
So like in our framework, just as if the product team would make a hypothesis that, hey, if we build this functionality, our users will behave in ways X. They'll upload a video and share it with 100 of their friends once a week. Then we can measure that behavior. what we're positing is that you could do that on the brand side too, and so you can make a hypothesis about what's going to evoke emotion in your or passion in your audience, and you can go run an experiment. And really, Jeremiah and I are urging people to go do wacky, crazy experiments because that's actually going to differentiate you, and it's going to get the best learning. And so, yeah, you can just sit down across the table from somebody and try to get them to, give you some sort of an emotional response. But what if you took, some sweat equity and went out into the streets and did something crazy? We did some lean startup training with 85 human resources people at GE, which is just amazing to me that GE is so far down the path that they're training their human resources managers on lean startup. And we had a bunch of fun problems for them to go and try solving with some solution ideas. And one of the things that they did is one of the problems is that employees in big businesses don't take enough time out of their day to sort of just act crazy and like let off some steam and have a little bit of fun. And so one of the teams went and put a hopscotch court outside of a conference room that was just chock full of people, sitting around one of those board meetings that Jeremiah is talking about. And they have this great photo that they were able to bring to this workshop, which was the senior vice president of HR hopping down the hopscotch court, inside of their corporate offices. And so they ran all sorts of crazy experiments like that. And those are the type of things that we're talking about, that you could posit that people will do these things or that they'll behave in a certain way. And we want to get away from, the focus group mentality that says, if you put 20 people in a room, you're actually going to get some real answers to, what these consumers want and what they'd be willing to buy and how much they'd pay and what's going to have an impact on their lives. And go out into the real world and run these wacky experiments that allows you to measure their real behavior.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I've been reading about lately and really thinking about a lot is, and it hit me when Jeremiah was saying that some of the traditional ways of coming up with a brand is kind of profiling based on things like age or gender or some of those kind of things.
Demographics.
Demographic profiling. And one of the kind of profiling that I've been thinking a lot lately about is profiling not on demographics, but rather on things like hopes and dreams or fears and frustrations. And when you do that, not only do you profile in a different way and it can reach different demographics generally, but it's also you're starting to understand the kinds of things that might drive passion. If you profile and think about what is it that motivates, what are the dreams and hopes and aspirations? Obviously, in your example, some people they hope for more love in their life, and they'll take it even if they have to push a button. Like, if you understand what the buttons that you need to push for your own customers are, you're going to start to empathize with them, and you'll start to come up with these experiments that can create passionate users.
Yeah, there's two really important things in that you say, and one of them is that, one, there's no right way to do segmentation, right? There's no correct way, but oftentimes we have really, really narrow focus when it comes to our segments. We say, okay, these people are most likely to buy. But there are so many different metrics that you can look at. I mean, this person is most likely to share is a metric that would be a huge one to look at. This person's most likely to be passionate. This person's most likely to bring a friend along. This person's most likely to all these different things, right, to share those hopes and aspirations with us. And so I think that when we take the demographics can be really cold and really sterile and kind of pull the humanity out of a human being and lump them in. And when we start to look at them as humans and we say, who are they? And if we could sit in a room full of 100 people and pick out our 5 customers that we think would be most passionate about us, we're probably doing a good job. If you can't do that, then you probably have no idea who your customer is. Because women that are 35 to 45 who drive an SUV and go to the soccer fields once a week are not human beings. It's a demographic. It's a descriptor. So who are they as humans? Where do they go eat? Why? they married? What types of relationships do they have? Who are their friends? These types of things. And then I think the second thing that you said in that that's very important is that is this idea of the aspiration. And so no company, I shouldn't say no, but most companies, and at least the ones that we're talking about in the book, don't start simply to make a profit. They start from a deep-seated need or a felt pain or a true passion that turns into their effort. And so there's a reason that you chose to be an entrepreneur. And there's a reason that you chose to build this particular product. And that's your aspiration. And from that story really comes the story of the startup. I started this because of this, and the startup kind of takes its own life when people start to have a relationship with it, right? But the other piece of that is that, as Brent was saying earlier, you can't just broadcast that and say, okay, this is it, and you should care of us, and because of this reason. But there's the aspiration of your customer, and what do they aspire to be? What do they hope to be? Why would something like this matter to them? And so, nirvana, or the magic, really happens when there's shared aspiration, and that turns into shared value. And so, customer value is not just one way. It's delivering customer value, right, in the functionality and solving the problem, and the passion of the aspiration of hitting that piece. And then that's the piece of branding that really is important to get. And so those two concepts, I think, are really, really important to understand before you dive into really doing any type of serious brand development work.
Yeah, so if you are at this point and you're listening and you're like, okay, yeah, I want to do brand. I feel like, okay, I haven't been thinking about brand. Now I think I should be focusing on brand. Obviously, I'll buy the Lean Brand book and read that. But what are some of the common pitfalls for people that are kind of getting started and they want to do it, but where do people fall short?
Well, I think that a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with, the first thing they're trying to do is figure out how, that great logo and the great, tagline, and I think it's just not important. You have to have a logo. You can go to the Wayback Machine, though, and which is on the internet, and choose some of your favorite startups and look at their initial logos, and you'll be pretty surprised about how horrendous some of them are, or even the ones that exist today. I mean, come on, Google's logo is not like an amazing logo. Matter of fact, it changes every time there's a holiday or something, right? They essentially change their logo. So I think that step one is for entrepreneurs to understand this different definition of brand and get away from the thinking about the logos and the artifacts and all of that kind of stuff for a moment. And then start thinking about, well, what is it? Why are you starting this business? And if it is just to make money, if that's your sole gain, that's your sole motivation, then maybe Lean Brand isn't actually for you. I think that there's other ways that you can go about branding then. But so why are you doing what you're doing? Why did you start this? And so there's a couple of things like that you can document. And then I don't know, I find it's very tough for entrepreneurs to even figure out the value of their product, really, because they're so into the technology. So number one is, what is the satisfaction that you hope to get out of it? So what problem are you solving? Why are people going to believe your promise? And this is not the brand promise. This is simply solving a problem. So you need to be able to articulate that. And then the next part is, can you hypothesize what it is about your business that's going to make people passionate about your company? And so that, again, maybe is beyond the product. It could be, distribution. It could be your content marketing. It could be your customer support. It could be a number of different things, but you should start thinking about that and coming up with hypotheses around what it might be. And then the final part is really what we were just talking about around customer segments. So think about your customer segments as people who share the same pain or passion and speak the same language. And by speak the same language, I mean that these people would actually refer to each other for solutions to that problem, and put those in separate buckets, and they're going to have maybe different satisfaction points and certainly different passion points. And so you need to create hypotheses around these different market segments, and now you have what you can go start testing. And so that's really what you want to do as your first step. Can you come up with 5 different things that you need to go test and design experiments and go start testing that? And that's going to start leading you down the path toward understanding what the messages are that you need to portray, and only after you know the messages and the story that you need to portray can you start thinking about the artifacts and some of these other things that are going to represent that story.
Yeah, I mean that's a great answer, and I mean I think the only
thanks Jeremiah.
I would add on to that is that a lot of the startups I've worked with and a lot of entrepreneurs I work with, I think the hardest thing, Lucas, to do is to break that old school mentality, everything that we've kind of just absorbed through osmosis about brand for years, and I think that's the hardest step to happen because a lot of entrepreneurs I work with, they're like, oh, you talk about branding. Look at my cool business card, and look at my awesome letterhead, and this logo, and blah, blah, and now I have my brand. And there's this belief that, like, in fact, in the book, in chapter 2, we lay out, like, I think 7 or 8 different, myths that exist and beliefs about brand that exist out there that we've actually run into working with startups. And so I think the hardest thing to do is to break that down and to say, okay, none of this stuff really matters, and what does matter is what's crucial to my business, which is what Brant was just talking about. And so I don't want to repeat what he said. If you don't remember, rewind the podcast and listen to it again.
Well, what's funny, Jeremiah, is that the other type of startup entrepreneur, the other type of founder, not the one that loves their business card, is the more technical guy. And I actually ran into a serial entrepreneur. He's been very successful here in San Diego. And he was all like, oh, God, you're talking about this aspiration stuff. Now you're just sounding like all of these other, fluffy brand people, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you just lost me, And I was like, oh, shoot, I described it wrong. And though I believe this aspiration part is true, what was funny is his first startup was around music sharing. And I said, dude, people were sharing music because they were passionate about music. It wasn't because the platform was cool. And so, A, Jeremiah, we might need to update our messaging a little bit for the technical side, but B, the story is still true. The fact of the matter is people did not love his product because of the software. They didn't love it because of the features. They loved it because, God, music is one of those things that you want to share with other people. And so that is the aspiration. And that's why he built the product, was so people could, was about the music. I mean, so music itself is such a great example because it evokes so much emotion and passion just in itself. And so, there again, it's not the business card, but it's also not just the product, like Jeremiah points out.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, and I recently heard something that kind of was the opposite example, and it was really, really something that stuck with me, which was that somebody was talking to a crop dusting, the guys that make the chemicals for crop dusters, and they were like, why do people want your thing? And obviously the first thing they said was, well, they want to kill weeds. And it was like, no, farmers don't actually want to kill weeds. What they want to do is they want to grow crops.
Yeah.
It's getting to that deeper thing.
Well, I would even say, among a lot of farmers, certainly family farmers, is they actually want to feed the world. They're actually passionate about feeding people. So it's not even just grow crops. It's actually, they feel a responsibility for being the heartland of America and actually feeding people.
Yeah, if they were to create a dialogue about how good it was to kill weeds and make a blog about killing weeds and let me tell you about how this new chemical kills weeds even better, it would create no passion with their users. If they create a blog,
you should see what we do to dandelions.
Well, there's something in that too. Is that, and I think this is really important. Is that all of these words we're talking about are so loaded, right? Yeah. Passion, vision, mission, like all of these things are just so aspiration, right? And so we even in writing the book really had to battle with ourselves to like make sure that we were really intentional about the language, and like, there was stuff that we said that we're like, this is right, but it's so loaded that it's wrong. You know what I mean? And so we have to change the way we talk about it. So there's this huge, like, going back to that, there's this huge hurdle, right, of like, all of this stuff that's just absorbed into us that we believe about brand, and that does sound fluffy, and that is, I don't know if I can curse here, but BS. It is, and I totally agree. And so when Brant says aspiration, the way that the one guy reads it is like, oh, that's fluffy marketing stuff, based on him going through a brand genius probably process, based on him doing all this stuff, right? That's why he believes that. But when we say aspiration, you're talking about the farmers. Yeah, the aspiration isn't to kill weeds, right? The aspiration is to like grow crops to feed the world, or to feed their family, or to, you think about the aspiration for music is not to listen to great music, but to share that music. I mean, think about how deeply rooted that is in who we are as humans. And so again, it's getting back to those things of like, you have to start with, we're dealing with human beings. Human beings are real, and they're breathing, and they have beliefs, and they have a past that informs their future. And all these things come down to the relationship that we desire and how we behave as an organization in that relationship, and how we want or how we desire or hope for our audience to behave. And the truth is that not every product, at least no product has ever started for everybody, except for maybe water, right? And that was not our product that anyone created, right? So like, there is no product for everybody. There's products that start and traction grows from a small group of passionate customers or users, and that's where growth occurs.
Yep.
And so those things are so key, is that you kind of have to take these big, baseballs full of jargon, like vision statement, and throw it up in the air and hit it as far away from you as you can, to even be able to start to think about it in a new way. And so that's a really big key to all this as well.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your guys' time. I think that where can people find you guys on the internet if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so leanbrandbook.com, and then I'm on Twitter at Jeremiah Gardner. And then you can also check out, if you just do a search for The Lean Brand on Amazon, pre-orders are live right now. The Kindle version launches on October 8th, and the book, the softcover, launches on October 20th. And then we'll actually be out in, I think, 7 or 8 different cities from the 22nd on to the end of the month of October. And so if you're in one of those cities, check out the website. We'd love to meet you at an event and hang out and give you a free T-shirt that says Lean Brand Early Adopter on it.
That sounds fun.
Right. So I'm at Brant Cooper on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and real quickly here, San Diego the 22nd of October, San Francisco the 23rd, Chicago the 24th, New York City events on the 28th and 29th. Boston on the 30th, and Austin, Texas on the 31st. And if people want us to come to their city, they can also reach out and let us know. We might turn you into an organizer, though, be forewarned. So, but yeah, so we're really excited about the launch. Go to the leanbrandbook.com, get on our email list so you can know where we're going to be, and yeah, look forward to seeing everybody out on the road.
Awesome. Thank you guys for your time, and buy the book.
Thanks, Lucas.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Craftsman Founder Podcast with Lucas Carlson. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, craftsmanfounder.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a Craftsman Founder production. Join us next time for another edition of the Craftsman Founder Podcast.